I was 7 years old when I went to raise an NGO for the first time. There were approximately 6 children there, all my age, all my height. The only difference, they were all HIV positive. At that age, I didn't quite understand what HIV was, and I wasn't resistant to the lack of awareness that was surrounded. I used to think I had HIV too. I used to go and cry to my mother saying कि मेरे को text कराओ, मेरे को HIV है, and nothing she would ever do or say would make me feel better until I saw the negative on the test. By the time I was 10, I fully understood what HIV means, and I'd already had my first personal encounter with what lack of awareness can do. Because I didn't know what HIV is, I want you to know. HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, which is a virus that attacks your body's defense system against diseases. When this virus starts attacking your immunity system, it's really easy for you to get sick and even die from diseases that your body could normally fight off. There is no cure for HIV yet. Once you have it for a lifetime. But that doesn't mean HIV is a death certificate. Treatment shows that people with HIV can live for decades with proper care. But why is it still such a taboo? Why is it such a stigmatized disease? Nobody asked for it and nobody can be blamed for it, but why do people still have to face the repercussions? Why don't HIV positive children have the right to education? Why do parents of unaffected children not let them play with HIV positive kids? Is it because it's a sexually transmitted disease, or is it because it's common amongst drug addicts? HIV is just a virus that is not spread through hugging, not spread through kissing, not spread through any saliva exchange. It's not even spread through eating food together. झूठा खाने से और छूने से सिर्फ प्यार बढ़ता है, HIV नहीं. These bias stereotypes have never affected me and will never affected me. I have played with these kids, I've danced with them, I've sang with them, I've slept on the same bed with them, I've even eaten from the same plate as them, yet I stand here in front of you unaffected. Some of my best memories have been with these kids. But alas, as I grew, so did my workload, my tuitions, and my dedication for squash. My visits to the NGO reduced from 7 days a week to 4, and then eventually scattered to a few across months. I started spending hours at the squash court, training for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and eventually it became my lifeblood. And then came 14th July 2016. I thought it was going to be just another regular day, going for squash, then getting to school late, and then going for squash again. But that was the day my life changed. I tore my ACL, which is a crucial ligament that helps keeps your knee stable, and my meniscus. It was a kiss of death for my athletic career. But I hadn't given up hope at that time. From the moment I was wheeled into surgery to the 52 weeks of physiotherapy, I was determined and, well, desperate to get back on court. Squash was my first love. I wasn't going to waste the past 2 years of my life. Exactly 1 year, 2 days later, I was back to fighting another war in those four-walled courts. My muscles taut, my racket firm. As soon as my opponent hit a drop, I lunged. But being the miraculously clumsy child that I seemed to be, I tore my ACL again. But this time, it was my left knee. Initially, I didn't want to believe it. I felt like it was a nightmare, but I felt the same pain again. The feeling of being so near to the taste of victory, so near to the light at the end of the tunnel, but just as soon as I was steps away, I was yanked back into the darkness. The surgery repaired my knees, but nothing could repair my shredded faith. Every time I looked at the scars, I was only reminded of all that I had lost. My friends, my love for squash, my ranking, and to me, my self-dignity. Nothing seemed to make sense anymore. I was yearning for that sense of personhood that I had to leave behind when I stopped playing squash. I quickly became a connoisseur of Netflix, a philosopher of procrastination, and a scholar of self-pity. But nobody could stand to see me like that, especially not my grandmother and my mother, and they took me to the world outside. With twiddling thumbs, I entered race once again. And that is where the magic happened. I spent my evening with those children who had no guarantee of life, yet they fought so resiliently through their struggles. That made me realize that they were going to end up helping me more than I would ever help them. They taught me how to smile again, they taught me how to be resilient again, and most of all, they gave me back the part that I had lost to squash. I started looking forward to spending all of my evenings with them. And every day, our relationship just seemed to grow, and soon they became my family. Quickly, I realized that their happiness was my happiness, and I had fallen in love again. 54 times to be precise. There, I met the 7-year-old Hanuman. When I'd met him for the first time, his stomach was bloated and his limbs were so weak that he couldn't even hold himself upright. I remember feeding him silently when he uttered his first words to me. मैं चाय नहीं पीऊंगा क्योंकि मैं काला हो जाऊंगा. And that is when I knew I'd met my best friend. Gradually, with time, Hanuman grew better, and he had the ability to light up the entire room with his smile. But he will always hold a soft spot in my heart, even though he isn't here with me anymore. I was in a movie theater when I got a call. Hanuman has succumbed to alcohol-related liver disease. An 8-year-old boy had to go through months of withdrawal symptoms, months of excruciating stomach pains, months of shivering. Why? Because his villagers, the only family that he knew because he'd lost his parents to AIDS, decided to feed him alcohol and opium so that they could put him to sleep. Why? Because taking care of an HIV-positive orphan was a job that was too tough for them. Because getting medications for his treatment was something that was not possible. Losing my family member, losing my brother, losing my best friend had engulfed me into the same darkness and despair once again. I felt like I had another injury, except that palpable ache in my chest now felt like physically getting my heart wrenched out. It made me realize the implications that stigmatization and lack of awareness had, how cruel it was. And from that day, with the goal of making sure that no HIV-positive person has to go through this, I set forth with my army of 53 little fighters. Our army was called Fight Red. HIV is seen as this stigma, as this taboo, and people with HIV are seen as this curse. But under the way that the lack of awareness creates are people who are just like you and me, are children who are just like you and me, if not stronger. At Race, there are children who want to become a singer. That's Vikram who wants to become a singer. There's Muhammad who wants to become a doctor. There's Raja who wants to become a fashion designer. If these kids have the spirit to fight for their dreams, who are we to stop them? And with that, I knew that I had to fight. I knew I wanted to make sure that every HIV-positive person had a friendly shoulder to lean on, and that nothing would destroy their dreams. From that day, I decided that Fight Red was going to be a foundation that makes sure that every HIV-positive person gets what they deserve. And I began advocating and campaigning against the stigma associated with HIV. I wanted to make sure that AIDS and HIV is a part of our society, and so I tied up with a bunch of education institutions across Jaipur so that these kids could have regular interactions and one-on-one conversations with people like you and me, with students. I might not have been able to lunge and reach to the ball, but I knew that I was a step closer to reducing the stigma associated with HIV. I might have not been able to fight that one opponent in the squash court, but I knew that now I had to fight the thousands others who held prejudices for HIV. I started to speak in schools, and then that turned into colleges, to communities and villages. Losing Hanuman was painful, but that lit a spark. And that spark has now turned into a wildfire called Fight Red, a wildfire of awareness, a wildfire that is fueled by the passion of awareness, the passion to change. Today, I proudly stand here and tell you that Fight Red has reached an audience of over 25,000 people, and hopefully 100 more. My goal of coming here was not just to tell you my story. It was to make you understand that you have the power to make a change in not just an HIV-positive person's life, but rather anyone's, no matter how small. You need to begin with being unprejudiced, with being unbiased. You need to see how somebody's disabilities or their problems do not define their capabilities. It does not limit their capabilities. If the children at race are so willing to fight for their dreams and passions, even after they've been hit and bogged down for having HIV, then you should have the courage to fall down, dust yourself, and stand up, and then continue following your heart. Thank you.